My dear friends, we have been discussing about how best we can make use of our sense perception in order to take the optimum benefit from our intellect, and that in turn for mystical contemplation. In that context, I shared with you that we often get attached to the object of sense perception. This leads us to some vices, to some kind of bondage. We are not at liberty to make the optimum use of our senses and the intellect. For example, when a person indulges in drinking alcohol, he becomes a drunkard. It's therefore necessary that we manage our sense perception. We get detached from the object of sense perception, especially when it is related to some immoral or wrong thing. Even if the things are not immoral and not wrong, we must have control over our sense perception. That's the first part we dealt with so far till the other day. I would like to go a step further and say, sense perception is a great gift, God-given gift. We must thank God for it. If we were deprived of sense perception, to that extent, we would not be exposed to the nature outside like a blind person, born blind person, cannot have the experience of color. And to that extent, also his knowledge will be prevented. It's therefore a great gift. While thanking God, we must maintain our senses, get them trimmed, and make the optimum use of it. I could also add, and as they say, through sense perception itself, we can arrive at mystical contemplation, or at least meditation. We can, for example, see a beautiful rose, colorful, sweet-smelling rose. We can see its beauty. We can meditate on its beauty, on its color, on its smell, and raise our heart and mind to God. Let's say a fruit which we eat. We feel it, we see, experience it as delicious fruit, beautiful fruit, and we desire it. Even when we take it, when we eat it, we can give thanks to God, how wonderful God is. So this could be done as regards all forms of sense perception. On the one hand, when we overuse it or misuse it, they become an obstacle. And therefore, there are many who recommend sense perception as a means of meditation. But one thing is true. Now, it is more easily said than done. When our heart is not detached, when the divine mystery is unseen, it is likely we who are not experienced, when we take sense perception and enjoy it, get addicted to it, attached to it. We cannot say, I will have all forms of sense perception at my disposal. I will go through it and make a choice of it. I cannot say that. First of all, such a choice, after going through all kinds of sense perception, is not necessary. We have reason to understand. We have the accumulated knowledge of the elders. So then, without ourselves indulging all kinds of sense perception, we can make it one that suits us well. So to say that sense perception is the best means to meditation is more easily said than done, because before in a sense perception, before we rise to our reason and to the Spirit of God, we can get stuck to sense perception. As I said, for example, when a person makes use of sense perception of drinking or some other thing, let us say taking some other enjoyable thing, it's possible that because sense perception gives us delight, we may get stuck to the delight. We may get attached to the delight and forget all about reason and the Spirit. On the contrary, when the Spirit is pure, clear, and intellect is well-intentioned, it's possible that sense perception becomes a means. Otherwise, in our sense experience, we may indulge in beyond proportion in sense perception and get attached to it. So, on the one hand, sense perception and all that goes with it is a gift of God. We must thank Him. We must maintain them. We must make the optimum use of it, proportionate use of it, rise above them in reason and the mystery of God. And on the other hand, we must protect ourselves from being attached to them. The better way of these would be make use of them insofar as it is necessary and get detached from the delight while enjoying the delight as much as is necessary. More than that, we get detached from it and rise to intellection. There is a wonderful plan of God in our transformation. When we deprive ourselves or detach ourselves from the enjoyment, from delight, from emotional attachment to sense perception, be they immoral or moral, be they permitted or not permitted, when we make that sacrifice, which implies a certain privation, which John of the Cross calls it dark night. God also gives us an alternative experience, religious experience in our very senses. When, for example, a person deprives himself of unwanted, exaggerated sense perception of eating and drinking and becoming gluttonous, when he deprives himself and protects himself from gluttony, or when a person deprives himself from seeing things or deprives himself from the delight, unwanted delight of seeing things, in a way he is in darkness as regards that delight. But God can give delight other way, in a religious way, in the sense perception of seeing, in the sense perception of being content. This can be said of all the five senses, even the sense of touch. When we deprive ourselves of unwanted delight or exaggerated delight in view of pleasing God, in meditation and contemplation, God can give us, substitute us with a religious experience at the level of the senses themselves. Thus, in our religious practice, in meditation, in saying prayers, in a religious act, in an act of mercy, we are supported by religious experience. We get consolation, we get joy, we get comfort, we get delight, we get tears of joy. So we are not totally deprived of all delight and comfort and consolation. When we are generous and take one step, God takes 10 steps. Instead of unwanted delight, God gives us religious delight, religious experience. And in the support of religious experience, we can go further. We can also attune our senses to the intellect and intellect to the spirit. This religious experience essentially based on the object of the senses. It can also be based on object of the intellect. But then it is pointing to God. Whereas sense experience, which is not religious experience, it is also based on the object of sense perception. But then it need not be pointing to God. So religious experience is the experience of something divine, directly or indirectly divine, and is felt as such in our sense experience itself, senses themselves. They give us certain upliftment, certain strength, certain courage, certain generosity, certain fervor. Thus a person, when he deprives himself unwanted, indulging in the senses, he can get fervor in prayer and meditation, fervor in generosity, fervor in act of mercy. The God is generous in this way. We are all accustomed to religious experience. We are given to prayer. We are given to acts of mercy. We are given to other acts of religion. And in that, at certain times, we call fervor. We experience religious experience. It is felt in us. John of the Cross calls it urgent longings of love. This longing is at the level of senses, at the level of the body, at the level of the emotions. It's love because here, with this longing, we yearn to love God all the more. But at the same time, these have their own limitations. I say limitations because we are aiming at union with the mystery of God, who is not seen, who is not heard, who is believed on the testimony of the Word of God. God is a mystery. We surrender ourselves in faith. Our sense perception is not adequate to it. Our intellectual rational conception is not adequate to it. Now I said some time back, God gives us sense delight in religious context and we call it religious experience. And this religious experience is based on the sense experience in the context of the divine. It's oriented to God. Now, since sense perception is always in reference to what we see, what we touch, smell and taste, with the name and form, a flower has a certain form, flower has a certain image, certain color. This is true of all forms of sense perception, be it of food, of eating, smell, taste, sound. Everything has got a certain name, a certain form. But God is without name, beyond every name and every form. Now, how can be this created experience based on the created thing with name and form be adequate to arrive at the experience of God, who is the creator, who is beyond every name and form? This is the problem. True, sense perception, even in religious sense perception, can be a help to meditation, and meditation itself gives a sense perception. All said and done, while on the one hand, we accept religious experience, we are fed by it, we are sustained by it, we are promoted by it, we know that sense perception is not adequate enough, is not proportionate enough to arrive at mystical contemplation. It's therefore necessary to be detached not only from the sense perception, which has nothing to do with religion, which is ordinary sense perception like eating, drinking, merrymaking, It is also necessary that we be detached from sense perception, which is religious, which is related to God. Because both, while in the first instance, definitely they go against God. In the second instance, they are not proportionate to the mystery of God. So therefore, it is necessary that we rise above sense perception, though it is good. And God Himself gives us that religious sense perception, which we call religious experience, and John of the Cross calls it urgent longings of love. These are early supports in our spiritual life. But then the senses must be subordinated to the intellect, so that intellect may rise to the spirit. May the Lord help us. Thank you very much.